Trapwords is a new word-guessing party game from Czech Games Edition. You, as the players, will be traversing through a dungeon in a fantasy setting, trying to guess words that your fellow teammates are giving you, while they are trying not to say certain words that they're not supposed to. Elaborate, please, for the people on what exactly that means.
Yes, some words will be taboo, but they call them trap in this game. The way the game works is you have this board set up with columns and numbers on them. When you enter a room, one person will be the clue giver while the rest are guessers. The clue giver will choose one of the words using the books, which will either give fantasy or regular words, depending on which set of books you choose. You'll get to read the word and then give it to your opponents. Your opponents will then look at that, and depending on the room you're in, they can choose, for example, if you're the red team, 4 words that if you say, you're out. So you have to think carefully of how you're going to give clues without hitting maybe obvious things that either you in general would say or anyone else would say. So for example, chalk, maybe if you're the opposing team, you're going to say things like street or sidewalk.
Board.
Yeah, things like that. And maybe if you're trying to get around that, maybe you say different, maybe past, I can't even think of things right now. You have to try to really think outside the box.
Yeah, and your team is working together to come up with the words the other side can't say. So everybody gets to contribute, depending on how you do it, one or more different words. So it is a collaborative thing. So it's also about kind of the discussion aspect and how much you can say to each other without giving things away to the other side. You progress down this set of dungeon. Each time you do, there are going to be more words that you can't say, so it gets harder as you go.
But it isn't just the traps your opponents are going to set up that you have to fight. The board will be fighting as well. There are curses when you enter a room for the first time you have to deal with. For example, petrification. Once your teams start guessing, guesser can't talk anymore. If you fail, next time you play in that room again, you don't have to worry about the curse. Curses, there'll be 2 usually each board, depending on what happens. And there's the boss monster. This is how the game ends. You try to defeat the boss monster. He's usually in the last room, but he may move up depending if people are losing too much.
There are a bunch of different bosses, and each one has its own special rule that you have to contend with. And some of those rules for the bosses and for those curses could be, actually affect the gameplay, like you said, where the people have to stop talking once the guessing starts. Mm-hmm. Or some of them are just sort of goofier, like you have to say all of your words in one breath, or you have to like hold a pose while you say it.
My personal favorite curse is the guessers have to say, I will eat my hat if it's not, and then say that.
Yeah, I will eat my hat if it's not whatever. Yeah, so some funnier ones in there, or maybe not, depending on your group. Your mileage may vary. But that is basically the game. It plays pretty quickly. I believe it's for 3 to 6 players. And it kind of makes sense because I think more than that, it would be too hard to coordinate what words you're going to write for the opposing team. But you can play with an odd number as well, which is kind of nice because even though it might be unbalanced, it's a party game, and at the end of the day, you just shouldn't worry about that kind of a thing.
Yeah, the game itself, the rules added through the curse and the monster are fantastic. The curses are a perfect sort of catch-up mechanism. Pretty much the person ahead has to deal with them, and people behind have to too, but it could slow down the people ahead first, because other people can sort of see how to deal with it. Boss monsters are fantastic. The way they work, if both people can't guess a word in a round, the boss monster moves closer. So the game will speed up regardless. You can't stall at the end. Mm-hmm. And for example, the troll we have out now, his card that we have out is the clue giver cannot say more than 10 words. So the bosses can really, once you fight them, you have to be like, all right, we think very carefully what I'm going to say.
Yeah, and there is a whole bunch of rules in the book about what words are okay, whether, for pronouns or proper nouns or different kinds of terms that are okay. I think as soon as you sit down and play this, most groups will say, oh, this is like taboo, right? That's the big game that this definitely takes a lot of inspiration from. The twist, though, of your own friends writing those words does add a lot to it, I think, because it's not just a card trying to guess. You can actually say, well, I know this person and I know what they're likely to say, so I can make it even harder for them to have to think even more carefully about what they're doing.
Speaking of which, I owe Jonathan $1 because when we played last, he put down gum when the word was orbit, and I thought the person wasn't going to say gum, and he did.
It is true. I wrote down gum, and I didn't think he was going to say it. I thought this is just, we have 5 words. I can't think of anything better. I'll just write it down. And you said, I'll pay you $1 if that triggers. And it did. And it was the highlight of my career. I retired from the game forever because I'll never beat that. So all those kinds of fun things can happen. A lot of enjoyment there. I guess it could be tougher or maybe better, depending on your perspective, playing with people you don't know as well, trying to predict what they will or won't say.
I think it's an either-or situation. I don't think it's too bad to go one way or the other, because if you know the person, for the orbit one, for example, I didn't expect gum. We thought he'd be much more like scientific terms, which I think is actually really fun, because then you have to think a bit more. And when you think of taboo, you have the word, and they tell you the words you're not allowed to say, which in sometimes like, oh, it doesn't matter, those words aren't there. There's plenty of ways you could probably get around, especially if it's like an actor or something, because the movie didn't come out when taboo was released.
Right.
But for this, if...
It's always up to date. The mind games also kind of really come into play with that, because you might think of a word that's super obvious that you don't want the other person to be allowed to say to trigger the clue. But you know that person is trying to think one step ahead of you, and they might assume that you're writing that word to say something else. So you, as the word writer, might say, well, they're going to think I wrote the obvious one, so I'm going to write the less obvious one.
Like gum.
Right, but then that could even become a meta thing where if everyone stops writing the obvious words, maybe the team will start saying the obvious words again. So it could be a really fun train.
That's why we say it's like taboo. I think it's so much better, because it's not simply just a card and read it. The fact that you have to think of a metagame with the words, the few things with the bosses and the curses, it makes it so much better.
Yeah.
And completely, the only thing I have a problem with this is the game could have been used on a phone app. I think while it's cool to have the books for each one that you can put and see the word for, being able, I think like we saw with Werewords, where you can even make your own lists and stuff, could have been another way to have a lot of really fun. Like if you did want to do a theme, like Pokemon, for example, and try to make some weird things that way. I think that could have been a lot of fun. That really brings just that extra thing to this game.
I could see that. It comes with pencil and paper and a decent number of pads that you can use to play. But yeah, it is maybe something that, since everybody has a smartphone these days, could have helped. They did, I'm pretty sure they came out with an official app, a companion app for code names. So maybe it is something in the future that they'll add to the game, which would be a decent addition, I think. For Trapwords, our crits and misses are as follows. Crits. Players making their own lists of words adds a special personalized touch to the game, makes it feel more interactive, and allows for more interesting gameplay when guessing words.
Not only that, it makes a fun meta for when you're trying to guess what words people will say, and you'll feel very rewarded when you think that maybe out of left field word actually gets said.
Curse cards and boss monsters add a twist to the game to keep players on their toes, while also making it a little bit easier for players behind to catch up.
With multiple bosses to choose from and a whole deck of curses that could appear on the field, this allows for each game to really add its own unique twists and turns. Misses. While Trapwords does have a fun word selection system using the books, it seems like it would be a perfect recipient for app integration, similar to what we see in games such as Werewords.
You could really put the app in Trapwords.
We do like the game mechanics, but this game relies heavily at the people at the table. Some people may not like the less rigid rules as well as the more goofier curses.
Personally, I'm not a huge fan of when games tell you to do goofy things that don't directly affect the gameplay and are more just for a party mood. But the nice thing is you can easily take those cards out or house rule some of those different rules and play however your group prefers. If you're a fan of Czech games, other game code names, or simpler, more traditional party games like Taboo, or anything where you're guessing words, odds are you're going to have fun playing Trapwords. It's pretty straightforward. It doesn't do anything crazy, outrageous, or revolutionary, but if you like guessing words, you're going to get to do that, and in a fun enough way with a unique enough twist that I think it's worth picking up.
You do say it's nothing revolutionary, but it does take the concept of taboo, and I feel like the simple things it does add makes all the difference in the world. The fact that the curses make you do really weird, silly things, or just have to think a little bit more outside the box, like maybe you only have 1 or 2 lines to say for guessing. The rooms itself are actually modular, so if you really want to make it more difficult, the tiles can be flipped, and so, or even easier, so that it's more trap words or less to customize for your group. And the boss monsters are just hilarious. Like there's even one that makes it so you have infinite number of guesses, so the room number doesn't matter, but the guessers can now trigger the trap words. So they have to be careful too.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun little twists and turns that you can add into the game like that. It's a small box. It's not an expensive game. If it sounds like your kind of a thing, definitely recommended. It's Trapwords from Czech Games. Check it out. Let us know in the comments if you've had a chance to try it. Maybe you have some funny stories about what words you've had to try to get people to guess, or are there particular words you thought were really difficult to try to give away as clue givers? It can be hard on both ends of the table. Let us know. Until next time, I'm Jonathan.
I'm Will.
And this was a Roll for Crit review. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more awesome board game content from Roll for Crit.
And please leave a comment. We're lonely.